Up, up, up. And welcome to Vintage Garage. Last week we finished the restoration of the Royale RP2, and this week we've decided to take a little R&R. We'll drive up to Hershey, Pennsylvania for the annual flea market and car show put on by the Antique Automobile Club of America. It will be a working vacation as we'll look for tools and other restoration supplies for the shop. Before we hit the flea market, we plan to check out the display of vintage race cars in the car show. After that, we'll watch the vintage race cars as they perform their demonstration runs. So stay tuned, we have a full show today. Glad you're here. We're now at Hershey. This is the site of the world's largest flea market for old car parts that's held every year in October. We're on the hill that overlooks the white field, which is in the foreground. The blue and chocolate field are off to the right. The car corral is sort of straight ahead. The structure in the background with the light towers is the stadium. That's where the vintage race cars will be. Let's head over there first. On the trailer is the car of Charles Crist. This is the car his dad made. It's a Saab 3-cylinder powered car called a Brand X. We'll talk to Charlie a little bit later to learn more about the car. Over here is Gordon White with his Offie-powered Curtis Midget. It's a real nice looking car, one of our favorites here. Next to Gordon White we find this 1953 Curtis 500S. That's a real pretty car. We'll get a chance to see it run later. This is the 1933 Ford Riley Special, called the Kraken Riley Special. Next to the Kraken Riley Special is this front-engine Elva Formula Junior. Let's go up and have a look at the details of the car. The motor on the Elva is up front. It's a BMC motor with two side draft SU carburetors with velocity stacks. Real neat looking engine. This car is Austin Healey AHX 14. It's a famous car. It was a pre-production Austin Healey. One of the first of long production run for Austin Healey. This car is called Hill Climber, the first racing Pontiac. It's a nice looking car. This is a Curtis Craft Midget owned by John Stefnick. It's Offie powered and it's a beautiful car, one of our favorites here today. This car was actually built by Curtis and wasn't a kit. Many of the midgets were supplied as kits and put together by other builders. This is a 1961 Chenoweth Championship car, the San Diego Steel Products Roadster. This car is a 1963 Watson Roadster built by A.J. Watson, driven by Roger Ward, a very famous car. Next to the Kaiser Aluminum Special is another 1963 Watson Roadster. This car was driven by Roger McCloskey and was the Constant Hot Special. It's a very interesting dragster. This is known as the Clock Teaser. Its first race was in spring of 1965. Has a fuel-injected Chevrolet engine. Nice clean car. This car is the Deer Lake Inn Special, built in 1949 for the 1950 racing season. Became the first tube chassis sprint car built by race car builder Hildegas of Allentown, Pennsylvania. Sitting next to the Deer Lake Special, we found a beautiful 1937 Buick Oval Track car, driven by Lou Funk Sr. at the Danbury Race Fair Arena, Danbury, Connecticut. It's powered by a 1949 Buick Straight 8 Chevrolet 3-speed transmission and Franklin quick change rear end. It's a gorgeous car. This is a Darrell Vila Alpi number 83 Offenhauser powered midget. It's a beautiful car. Let's go back to the beginning of the line and interview Charles Christ.
My name is Charles F. Christ Sr., and the car here behind me is a 67H modified SCCA sports racer. It was built by my father. It's a copy of an Elva Mark VI chassis using a Bagra body and Saab 3-cylinder 2-stroke power using a 750 GT engine. My father assembled this car when I was a little boy. In 1969, he sold the car when he retired from racing. And around 8 years ago, I purchased the remains of the car, and I've restored it back to the way it was when my father raced the car last in '68. The emblem on the front of the car here is a bit of an interesting piece of history. We had an ice racing car, which was my last experience with my father driving a Saab 93 sedan racing. The car was destroyed in an accident towing to the ice races up in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. The car was so badly damaged it broke off the trailer and impacted the tow vehicle, and it had to be cut up and salvaged for bits and pieces, which built this car. But the Saab emblem that you see on the front of the car was the deck lid emblem off of my father's ice racing car, which all these years I had kept as a trinket from that race car, and it ended up replacing the one that was missing on this car when I restored it.
The vintage race cars will be judged in the car show on Saturday. One of the rules here is that all show cars must be driven on the show field to prove that they run. The exception is the vintage race cars. They must prove that they run with the demonstration laps at the stadium today. Let's go inside the stadium and watch the runs. We'll try to leave the camera on for one full lap for each car. Even though the cars will be off camera for much of the lap, we enjoy hearing the sounds they make. This is the 1963 Shelby Cobra owned by Bruce Larson. This is the Darrell Vila Offie-powered midget.
The building was destroyed by Frank River. The body of Lola. This car is not a stranger to the Hershey Stadium Raceway.
This car is an old Mercer. This is a real nice sprint car. Next up is the 1963 Kaiser Aluminum Watson Roadster Champ car, owned by Robert McConnell.
Accident review 1963 Watson Championship car. This one was built in 1963 by A.J. Watson. Sponsor was the Kaiser Aluminum Special. Of course, the body is aluminum, magnesium, and fiberglass. It's powered by a 4-cylinder 255 cubic inch Offenhauser. In 1963, this car qualified second in the Indianapolis.
Next up is the Elva Formula Junior, owned by Frank Stark, and this is one of our favorite cars here today. This is the red and black number 75, a beautiful car. Next on the track is the Deer Lake Inn Special, a Hillegas tube frame sprint car.
This car ran the AAA circuit in running ways to the Joe won the 56, 57 USAC Eastern Stop Loss. The car itself was restored to the opening day 1954.
Next up is the 1961 Chenoweth Championship car, owned by David Schleppe. Next to make its demonstration run is the 1963 Constant Hot Watson Roadster, owned by Robert McConnell. Next on the track is the 1937 Buick Oval Track car. Next up is the 1933 Kraken Riley Special, owned by E.W. Watson.
Until 1963, when it retired.
That other one just got here.
1973, this car won its first senior award at Hershey.
Next on the track is the Clock Teaser, the crowd favorite. Next to make its demonstration run is the blue and white Offie-powered Curtis Craft Midget number 33, owned by John Stafnick. Next up is the aluminum-bodied Austin Healey hill climb car.
1964, and the lad's father was a pioneer in AACA. The car has quite a history. I have several pages documentation for a little bit. The car was built for hill climbing in 1963.
Next on the track is the black 1952 Curtis Buick.
Bill Chapin is the next driver, 1952 Curtis. The car was purchased in 2000. The car is known as the Curtis Buick and driven by Bill Murphy during 50.
Next to make its demonstration run is the 1927 Pontiac hill climb car owned by Arnold Landvoigt.
This vehicle out here Lambo from Savage, Maryland. It's a 1926 Pontiac and it's a hill climb racer. Arnold has spent quite a bit of time researching this car and asked if anybody has any articles or any information regarding hill climb in the New York area.
Charles Christ has the honor of making the last run in his Saab-powered Brand X.
73 was constructed and sent to North America. Came to Hershey, and Charlie was able to get together and bring the car back into the family again, thanks to Barry Levine.
Those demonstration runs were great. We can't get enough of the sounds of those old motors. We now have the rest of the afternoon to walk around and enjoy the flea market. The flea market is so large that it's divided into fields, and each is given a name. There's the white field, the blue field, the yellow field, and the chocolate field. It takes a lot of walking to cover all the fields. This is a stand J.P. McVicker. He makes wiring harnesses for Packards and sells wire in every size and color. It's just typical of one of the things you can get at Hershey and nowhere else. Real good assortment of stuff here. Next stand sells new tools. We'll go up and have a look at that. Every now and then we come across vintage race cars in the flea market area as well. Here's a stand that has 4 of them. They're all real nice and we'd like to have any of them. This stand over here specializes in vintage bicycles. Got quite a collection of vintage bicycles. It's one of my favorite stands here. It's got a ton of used tools and it's a good opportunity to pick up a tool that's missing from a set. And we brought our list of tools that we need and we're going to stop here and go through and see if we can find some of them. We're now at the yellow field and it stretches for many acres. Here's a stand that specializes in vintage race car miniatures. Here's a great stand that sells hubcaps of every size and variety. While walking through the yellow field, we came across this really nice MGYA. It's one of the nicest cars we've come to today. Sure is a nice looking car. Here's a nice stand that sells old gas pumps and all of the things you need to restore gas pumps. They have globes and decals and a lot of interesting things. Here's another stand that illustrates the reason for coming to Hershey. This guy has a big collection of clips and hood bumpers and all kinds of specialty parts that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. Tray and tray and tray of it, all sorted by size. This is just one of about 100 aisles on the chocolate field. Ton of junk on this row. This area over here is called the car corral, and all these cars are for sale. This is just a fraction of the car corral. It's perhaps 20 times as large as this. This is a 1964 BSA Starlight we found in the flea market. It's one of the vehicles we'd most like to have. This stand here sells nuts and bolts by the pound. I think we'll stock up our bins back at the shop. Over in the car corral we find this 1953 AACA. It's a nice looking car, but its asking price is $79,900. This is another field of the car corral. All these cars are for sale today. This is one of the main roads on the white field. This stand specializes in signs of every size and shape. We thought that we had a pretty nice truck until we saw this one. This one is a vintage number 6 department. Looks like something we might own. This stand specializes in carburetors, and there's a ton of Stromberg carburetors here. I think this is pretty neat. This is a Lambretta truck made by the same company that makes the Lambretta motor scooters. Sort of a motor scooter with the rear axle and a box to put stuff in. Really made to seat 1 but could seat 2 in a pinch. We think it's pretty neat. It's for sale for $1,500. We found this 1940s midget in one of the booths. There's a flathead Ford V8 engine.
We had a great time at Hershey and plan to go back next year. We still have time left today to load up the Royale RP2 and the Lola T492 for the race at Virginia International Raceway next weekend. We've entered the Lola in the race, but plan to test the Royale some while we're there. That's it for this week at Vintage Garage. Glad you were here. I hope you enjoyed the trip to Hershey. I know we did. Next week, the show will originate from Virginia International Raceway. We've entered the Lola T492 and the SVRA vintage races there. We plan to get some good in-car video, interviews with some of the other drivers, and shots from around the paddock. So until next week, thanks for coming. Glad you were here. Keep the shiny side up. See you next week from VIR. If you'd like more information about any of the projects we've worked on today, please visit our website at www.vintagegarage.com. There's a link to our email address on the website. Please email us. We'd like to hear from you. Till next time, keep the shiny side up. Thanks for coming. See you next week.